Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to part 19 of the Employee Manager, where I've got an additional report to show you today called Timeclock Report. We're going to be able to run through all of our time clock for a given payroll or a given pay period and have a summary. I have also changed additional for a time format where we have both the decimal and a time format. So if we switch to decimal format and we go ahead and run that report again, we're going to show that all of our hours and all of our totals and summary go to a decimal format. And if all user has to do is switch back to time format, and then we're going to go ahead and show that again. It's going to switch back to a time format, and this covers every total throughout the application. So you can see it's now in a time format. So we're going to go over that. We've also got in the events an additional all day, which will automatically set our starting at and ending at an all day. So we've added that. I've added filtering, so we can now filter between an event type. So that's going to be a great feature. So I've got a lot to show you. Let's get started. Alrighty, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me. We've got a lot to cover. Do check the links in the description below. We'll both have the available for the download of this application, so you can get that free. And of course, please check out the Advanced Dashboard Masterclass. That's an amazing dashboard that I showed you last time, but go ahead and click on that. And if you want to create amazing single-click dashboards with automatic filtering, sorting, and custom reports, that is the dashboard that you want to take. It's an amazing 15-hour masterclass, so make sure you check that out as well. We're going to start off today with reports. Last in part 18, we covered the earnings statement, and today we're going to cover the new time clock report. And this amazing dashboard allows you to create multiple types of reports all in a single click feature. And of course, our dashboard masterclass covers that in complete depth. So you want to take care of that and take a look at that. So that's really important. All right, let's get started on this. I've got a lot to show you, and the basically idea is we've added additional features in here. And let's take a look at this because this could be a little confusing. In this particular application, as you know, we can create multiple payrolls, and from our payroll screen, we've got lots of different payrolls, right? So every time a payroll gets created, we get a new payroll, and so it creates a payroll name like this. However, we also have pay periods, and those are things. Pay periods, which are set up here, are covered every type of pay period, and they'll continue down. So you can create as many number of pay periods as you want, and pay periods may or may not have a payroll created, right? So, but what we may want to do is we may want to run a specific report based on the number of hours on a pay period. There may not be any payroll connected to that. So we want to make sure that we're able to create and determine hours of a time clock even if there is no payroll that's been created. So that's really important. So as we change this hours, it'll automatically update the report. So if we were to change the hours here to this one, you'll see I don't think there's going to be much data. Oh, there is a little bit of data, but the information gets sorted and filtered here accordingly. And when you click the time clock report, it gets updated. Of course, you can set different employees in different times, so we can do that. There may not be any data here, but sometimes there is. So when there's data, it gets automatically refreshed on the chain. So we're going to go over those features today and how we created that report. So let's go ahead and click on the employee that has data. And basically the idea is to display the clock in and out. And so based on the time period selected, so if we were going to go ahead and change a specific payroll period or update it, you'll see that the data will refresh automatically. And I don't think there's going to be any data in this particular pay period, but in this particular pay period, we do have data for this employee. So it's automatically going to refresh. We can also select payroll. So payroll will be, we can use payroll as well. So we can select hours based on a specific payroll or hours on a specific pay period. So that's going to be really, really helpful moving on. And so I wanted to show that to you. So let's go ahead and go over that. We also have the summary here, and the summary is going to summarize our regular hours and our overtime hours. So we have a little small summary for that employee, and of course we can print the report as well. Let's go ahead and take a look and get into the guts of this. One other thing that I wanted to show you is the ability to create these reports off the area. And so in the last, in part 18, we covered our earning statements, which is actually going to cover our report is generated in columns AA through AL. In this particular report, we've generated the report from columns BA to BL. And then what we do is we're going to go ahead and transfer that information to the main area. So as you create more reports, they get generated in the columns to the right, and then they get transferred to the main area here. This way it gives us a great single click report. Simply by clicking the report, it'll refresh it, and I'll go ahead and show you just how we did that. Now keep in mind, each of these reports is been assigned a specific report number. This is Timeclock Report is report number 2. That report number is stored here in B3. B3, that's going to tell us what report number. So we want to make sure that you know that the report number is here. So each report will have a different number. All right, let's go into this feature and let's go show you how we did that. Into the VBA, under the developers, clicking Visual Basic, Alt F11 will get you there. Of course, if you don't have the developers tab available, you can locate that and get that visible in the options, and then just go ahead and click on the Customize ribbon and make sure you select developer there. All right, so that's going to get you that developers tab. Alt F11, of course, and Visual Basic will get us there, and let's go ahead and take a look at that. Now you'll notice that we have a brand new module called Reports Timeclock Report right here, and previously we have one for Clear Report, one for Earnings, and one for Time Clock. So we're going to focus on the Time Clock Report, and basically in order to generate that report, we're going to run some on-sheet macros. Those are macros because when we select it, we want something to happen, right? When we select C7, we want this report to generate. So we've got to run that macro first. So let's focus real quickly on the reports sheet. These are macros that run directly on the report sheet. So there's macros that run when something changes and when something is selected. So in this case, we're going to focus on something selected. Well, what happens if the user selects anywhere from C6 to C7? We need to run a report, right? We only have 2 reports, so we're going to keep that range small. We only have C6 and C7, right? So if they select something, then do something. But what are they going to do? Well, we have 2 different reports, so we have to know which one to run. Well, the first thing we want to do is clear the report. So regardless, we're going to run the macro, and that macro is basically going to clear that selection. We went over that last time, but just briefly, all that macro does is clear the main section. So when we look at that macro report's clear. All we're going to be doing is taking a large range, clearing the range, clearing the formats, and then unmerging any cells in case they're merged, and then unlocking them. That's all we're going to do. So that's going to be regardless of the report type. So we want to make sure to run that macro regardless. So we're going to run that. Then we need to make a determination. If the user has selected row 6, then run this macro, which is the earnings statement. And if the user has selected target row 7, then run this time clock report macro right here. That's what we're going to focus on right now. All right, so let's focus on that. And we can get to that macro really just by right-clicking and clicking the definition. And that's going to take us right to that module, Reports Time Clock Report. And let's go over this. This is the macro that we're going to focus on right away. And the name of this macro is Report Time Clock. All of our reports begin with this report, so we can easily see them and locate them. They're organized. We want to know the last report row. That's important because we need to determine the range. So we need to figure out the last report row. So we need to define that as long, and also the last time clock row. Now the data is going to be coming from our time clock, and that is right here in our time clock list. So when I run an advanced filter, I need to know the last row. In this case, it's 45, but I need to define that last row using end XLUp. So we need to define that as a term. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the clock in date here. I'm going to say, okay, it must be greater than the date. We need to focus on a specific employee ID, and we need to be less than a clock in date. So we're going to use that, and then we're going to run our advanced filter to get just the information that we want, just the information here. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to take some formulas, and I've stored these formulas here to determine the total break, the regular hours, and the overtime hours. I'm going to copy those formulas down here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this data, I'm going to bring it over right into the reports section. I'm going to paste it right in our reports, not in the main section, but in our other section, and that's right here. So I'm going to paste all of that data right here. Then once it's pasted and formatted, we can then automatically summarize our regular hours and our overtime hours. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the last row here. I'm going to determine the range, and I'm going to bring all of that information into our main section right here. So it's really just three parts. One is the advanced filter. Two is bringing it over into our reports section, our temporary section here. And then the third part is bringing it over into our main section here. So we're going to walk you through each of those three steps in our macro. So let's continue on. So we need to determine the last filter row, right? I need to know the last filter row. That's the results actually of our advanced filter, and that's going to be right here. So I need to know what the last row is. In this case it's 12, but we need to determine that. So we need to determine that as a long. All right, next up we want to determine the report range. That's the entire range of the report because we're going to copy that over into the main section, so we're going to define that as a range. We also want to stop the calculations, and that's a macro that's going to stop our automatic calculations. It's going to turn off screen updating, so that's going to help us generate this report a lot faster. We're going to be focused on report sheet 15, which is the reports. That's sheet 15, so we're going to primarily focus, so we're going to go with sheet 15. And the first thing we want to do is set the report number. That's in B3. I showed you that just a moment ago. This is report number 2, so we're going to focus on that. That's going to help us when we need to refresh the report. We need to know what report we're going to refresh, so that's important. Define that report with a unique ID. In this case, it's report number 2. We're going to also want to clear any old values on the report section. And now that's different than this. That's different than clearing the main section. We use a macro. Let's go back into that. We use a macro to clear this main section right here. But what I also want to do is I want to clear any values from here that might have been. So I want to make sure to clear that. So from BA all the way to BH and down, I want to clear those. And don't worry about this conditional formatting. We'll focus on that a little bit later on. But so I want to clear that. So we can do that just with this line of code here. BA7 through BH99, clear the contents, clear any old values of that. Not the conditional formatting, just the contents. We also want to clear contents of the sheet 9. What's sheet 9? Well, that's the time clock list. Since we're going to be running a new advanced filter, we need to make sure that any old values are completely cleared. So in the time clock list, what I want to do is I want to clear Z3 all the way to AI3. I want to clear any criteria that may have been there, and I also want to clear any values here, any results that may have appeared, so we can get this ready for our new advanced filter, so we can put in our new criteria here, here, and here, and then we can return after we run our advanced filter, we can return brand new data here. So we want to make sure we clear that out before running any new advanced filter. So that's an important step. So we have to do that. We can do this right here, Z3 through AI3. This will clear our criteria, and then AA5 through AI9, this will clear our results from our time clock. All right, next up, now we're ready to put in those three variables, the from date, the to date, and the employee ID. I want to put those in for our criteria, and that's right in here. So I want to put in greater than the clock in date, which is our from date, greater than or equal to. I want to put in our employee ID as a criteria, and I want to put in again a clock in. We're going to duplicate this because we have, this is and, right? It must be and. So and greater than or equal to November 12th and less than or equal to November 25th. So we need to do both of those instances to return only values within those two dates. So that's very important. So we need to put those three specific values in our criteria, and we can do that with those 3 lines of code. But first we want to run a check. We want to make sure that they're not empty. If H3 is not empty, then Z3 equals H3. What is that? That's the from date. From date is located in H3 in our reports right here. Go back to the beginning of it. H3 is right here. That's our from date. Our to date is located in J3. So I want to take this value. I want to add less than, or excuse me, I want to add greater than or equal to it, and I want to put it right in here in our criteria. So I want to add the greater than or equal to, and then I want to put the date in. So that's important. And then on the from, what I want to do is I want to add the less than or equal to sign here, and then I want to put in the date. So we can do that with those lines of code, but first we have to make sure they're not empty. So if H3 is not empty, then sheet 9 Z3 equals greater than or equal to, and the H3 value. J3, if not, that's not empty. Sheet 9, 83 is less than or equal to J3. And then, of course, we want to put in the employee ID. We're just focused on one single employee, so I want to make sure that employee ID is also part of the filter, that advanced filter. And our employee ID, of course, is located in B9, and we want to make sure this is not empty. And B9, AB3 is where we're going to put that employee ID. And if you look here in the reports, B9 is our employee ID. Back in the reports, you'll see our employee ID right here, B9. And what is this? This is simply an index match from their name. So when we select an employee, this employee will change using index match. I think we went over this last time. It's just a simple formula that's going to pull up our employee ID when we run an index on employee ID, and then we match the row based on their name, and then we use a single column. So that's going to get our employee ID, and we're going to take this employee ID from B9 and transfer it right over to the time clock list right here in AB3. So that's what that line of code does. Now we've got all of our criteria set. We are ready to run our advanced filter. And of course, our advanced filter is going to take our first row, including the headers, A4, and it's going to go all the way to J in the last row of this table. And then we're going to use a criteria. We're going to use this as our criteria all the way from Z3, now including the headers, Z2, all the way to AD or AI in this case, if we have any other filters. That's going to be it. And then our results are going to go from AA4 all the way to, I think we included just the notes here, AF. So that is all we're going to do. And these are going to be formulas that we're going to add in the second step. So let's go ahead and through that. Ready to run our advanced filter, but first we have to determine the last row of our time clock data. This line of code will get it. Sheet 9A, the first column, 99 and up. This is going to get us our last row of data from the time clock row. Next up, sheet 9, A4, and H. This is our main advanced filter. This is our main data. All of our main data is here all the way to H and the last time clock row. We just need to run it till H because we don't need any other data in this case. So in this case, H just is going to encompass our notes. I don't need anything beyond that. Sometimes we use row and sometimes we want this, but for our purposes, we just want to cover this data right here. So that's all we're going to do for our advanced filter. And next up, we're going to copy that information over, and we're going to use a criteria that we just went over, that Z2, including the headers. 2 must include the headers. Same thing we did here. 4 is our header row. Must include those headers, and they must be the same. So this is our criteria, and we're going to copy that to just the row I showed you, AB4 through AF4, and of course we need unique values. That's going to do it. That's going to run our advanced filter. All we need to do is now set our last filter row. I need to determine the last row of our results. We can use sheet 9 AB and NLX row. This is going to determine our last row of our results. In this case, the last row is 12. We need to know that last row. In fact, I need to know if there's no data. For example, if the last row is less than 5, I need to skip everything else. So we need to run a check on that in the code as well. If the last filter row is less than 5, then go to no time data. That's going to skip everything and go right to here. All right, next up, now that we have no time, what we're going to do is ready to copy. Now I want to copy those formulas down. And those are the formulas that are going to calculate our break time, our regular hours, and our overtime hours. And we went over these formulas before, but I want to copy those. Let's take a look at those right now. Those formulas are stored up here. And I've added a little bit of a difference because now we have a time integer, and our time integer, I'll focus on that. But basically, that's going to change the difference between whether it's a decimal format or an hourly format. Decimal, we'll go with that in just a bit. But so basically these formats are going to change. So these formulas calculate our total break based on these times, calculate our total break in, break out. And then of course we're going to run a little bit of a formula called 1 divided by time integer. Time integer is going to change. It's going to be either 1 or 24. Time integer is here, just so you know, just so you give you a quick. Time integer is something new that I created in the admin. Basically in the, let's go ahead and pull it up in the company information here, time integer is here, time integer. And this is going to change 1 to 24 based on the user selection. So if it's a time format, that time integer is going to be 24. If it's a decimal format, it's going to be 1, automatically 1. And so that's going to help us with our formulas throughout whether we want to change them. So just so you understand what that is and how it works. It's either 1 or 24 based on the user's selection. All right, back into the time clock list here. So we're going to take these formulas that calculate either, and we're just going to copy them down. All I'm going to do is we're going to, in the code, copy, and we're going to paste them down, paste in the formulas just like that. So that's all we're going to be doing with that line of code, because I need to calculate based on the breaks. I need to calculate based on the clock in out. I need to calculate the overtime based on all of that information. And now that information is located in those formulas. So that's what we're going to do in that line of code right here. So we're going to copy those formulas, AG1 through AI1, and then we're going to paste them down. We're going to paste in the formulas, just the formulas. That's all we're focused on here. And where are we going to paste them? Starting at row AG5 all the way through AI in the last filter row, just what we did there manually. And next up, because we need to calculate this sheet. Why do we need to run the calculation? Because we've stopped calculations using this code. And we have formulas here. So we need to make sure those formulas count. Nothing is going to be calculating. And it's fine. We can calculate just one sheet. We don't need to calculate the entire workbook. So let's go ahead and calculate those formulas that we just painted in using this line of code. That way, all of our calculations can stay manual, can stay off, except we just want this sheet calculated. So we do that with just this line of code. All right, next up, now we've got all of our formulas in, we've got all the values, we've calculated them, we're ready to copy them over. So the next step, all we're going to be doing is taking this data right here and copying it over all the way into our main reports section right here, all the way on the right here, bringing it right in here. So we can do that with just this line of code. So we're going to say on our report row, now we're focused on the report, dot is our report, BA7, that's our first line, through BH and the last filter row plus 2. Why are we adding 2? Because our report section starts in row 7, whereas our filter starts in row 5. So we need to add 2 onto that. So we need to make sure, because this starts at 2 rows above, so we need to add 2. And this is going to equal sheet 9, AB5 through AI in the last filter. These are basically our results, including our formulas, and we're going to bring them right over into our report section. All right, now we just need to set the last report row. I want to know the last report. It's simple. It's going to be the last filter row plus 2. And then this is where we skip. Now we're going to run a check just in case the last report row is less than 8. Why would it be less than 8? Well, if we've skipped no time data, this last report row would be 0 because we just skipped it. So we're going to set a minimum row of 8 just in case there is no data. All right, and now we're ready. Now we can set the report range based on that last report row. BA5, that's going to be our first row, and that includes the header of our report right here, BA5, and then we're going to go all the way to the last row, whatever it is. So when we run this report, let's go ahead and get some more data in there. When we rerun this report, now we'll see we've got data. So it's going to take BA5, it's going to determine our last row, of course at 14. It's going to take all of this, including BK, including the summary. Another reason we don't want anything less than 8 is because our summary is on row 8. So if there's one line of data, if our last row is 7 with just one row, we need to make sure our minimum is 8 because I want to make sure this total and overtime gets copied over 2. So our minimum last row must be 8. And we did that with that line of code. So we're going to take all of this, our range, we're going to determine our range, which is BA5 all the way to BK in the last row. In this case, it's 14. And we're going to copy it over right here into F5. We're going to paste all that, paste all. And then we're going to also paste the columns. I want the columns exactly as they are in the original. So we can do that with that line of code. We're going to copy that range. And we're going to paste that range in F5. Paste all and paste the column widths. And next up, this should be actually false. Application, we're going to end it because we've copied and pasted. Application cut copy mode equals false, and that removes those dancing ants around those cells when you copy and paste. We're going to set B2 as false just in case. We'll use this maybe later on, but we want to make sure that the report load is set to false. And then we're just going to select another cell. It's a really, really easy macro. There's not a whole lot going on. It's pretty much a straight advanced filter, and that's how it works. So every time we click this, and now how do we get this to change? So all we need to do is when we change employees, how do we get it to report? Well, that's on selection change. That's on selection change. And so in this case, we need to set this, but this is not going to work. If we set this column to 16.7 and we run that same report again, it's gonna be back to that column. So make sure that, for example, let's set this column. We know the column width needs to be 16.71. That means you have to go. Remember, the column widths are copied over. So we need to make sure you bring this out to the proper length. This is the column because this column this is the column width that's getting copied over. So we need to make sure. So when we reset this column width properly, also then when we run the report, that column width is going to be copied over properly, and it's going to maintain that column width. So that's important. So also when we make a change to the employee or make a change to the payroll, we need to refresh that report, and we do that through change events on the reports. If we go ahead and look into reports here, if there's a specific change, if there's a change to F4, that is the update to or from dates, right? If there's an F4, let's go ahead and take a look at that. F4 is here in the pay period. If there's a change to that, figure out what report are we trying to refresh, and then run that macro. In this case, we're going to update the to and from dates. We're going to update those to and from dates. We're going to clear the report, and then we're going to say, okay, if the report was B1, then run this report, reports earnings statement, refresh that. However, if B3 is 2, run this. So we can differentiate. Even though we're making the same change, we can run different macros based on the report number. And that's why the report number is so important. So we know whatever report was there, we're going to run the same report again. And that's for F3, which is the payroll drop-down list, or F4, which is the pay period drop-down list. Pretty much the same thing. And of course, on employee change, H4, we're going to do the same exact thing. We're just going to clear the reports, and then we're going to run individual macros for the report based on whatever report was there. So that's all we have to do with that. All right, I'm glad I got to show you that. That's the update on the reports. All right, I also wanted to show you the conditional formatting, how we go ahead and do that on this report since it's copied over. Let's go ahead and pull up this employee who's got a lot of data here. And you'll see we've got alternate rows conditional formatting here. And as you know, this main section, we actually clear out all of the formats. So when we clear the report, the formats get erased. So we need to make sure that our formats are contained here in our data here. But in actuality, if we delete this data, you'll see the formats don't go away. And the reason we can do that when we copy over formats, there's a couple of rules that we need to keep in mind. And this format, the reason these formats are still here is because they're based on the data here. They're based on this column F, because that is the destination column, destination. If we clear this data out here, you will see that when we move over, now the conditional format is gone. So let's take a look. Let's go ahead and refresh that report, and then take a look and see how we got that conditional formatting to work. All right, and bringing that data back in here to the time clock, and then we'll go ahead and show you exactly with data how that. So we'll bring it on over, and then just click on a cell and go into the home and conditional formatting, and then manage rules. And we have just one rule here, and there's a few important things. There's going to be two conditions that are going to be used in this condition formatting. There's two conditions. One condition is I want to make sure there's actually data in the first column, and the second condition is going to be an alternate row. I only want to cover those rows which are even rows, 8, 10, 12, 14. Those are the rows I want to cover. So those are the two conditions. Now the first of condition, in order to get the destination columns covered, the destination, remember, our destination is here in F, starting in F all the way over to M. Okay, that is our destination. So it is that F that we need to focus on. We don't care if these are formatted or not. We're just focused on our destination. It is therefore, since we're actually copying it over, it is the destination that we must focus on. So you'll notice F7, that is our destination. F is the column. And notice there is no absolute $ before the 7 because we want this rule for all of the rows below, or for all the rows contained within our applies to. And we want to make sure that our applies to also starts on row 7. So that's the important rule here, that whenever we're conditional formatting and we copy over those, the conditional formatting, in the formulas, we must have our destination columns, Now, when it comes to applies to, it doesn't matter. When it comes to applies to, this applies to will update to our destination. For example, let's go ahead and take a look at the rules here. Notice when we go into conditional formatting and manage rules here, you'll see that the have already been updated. They've already, in fact, we don't need this N8N here. So it's actually I need to update the original. So it's more so you'll notice that the applies to has automatically been updated when we copy that over. So let's go ahead and update that rule. We don't need these two cells. So I'll just go ahead and click in conditional formatting and applies to, and then manage and then remove these. So you'll see how the applies to will update. The applies to automatically updates when we copy, but the rules and the formulas do not. So we want to make sure of that when you're copying over conditional formatting. Remember this, the applies to will update, will move over accordingly, but the formulas do not. So we want to make sure that we use our destination columns within the formula. So that's the important rule there, and that is how we get those rules to copy over properly into our data. So even if it's just one row of, it's only gonna copy those even rows. So that's really important. I'm glad I got the chance to show that to you. Let's go ahead and move over onto the events where we have a filtering. We've got a really great filter. Let's remove this reminder so we get a little more screen updating because we don't need that. All right, having lots of events, if you remember correctly, we've got every time we create an event, we're going to get a new event down here in this table, and we want to be able to filter those events, and we can do that with just a little bit of code. And I also want to be able to clear those events so that we can restore our list. So if I enter a specific name, even just a partial name, we can get a great filtering list. And we can do this because the original data is stored on a different table. The original data is stored, and that really helps. That's why we can filter this, because this is not our original data. Our original data is stored elsewhere in our events list, and our events list is here, located here. So all of our original data is stored here, so we can easily filter because we can bring this data in and out accordingly into our events. So that's really helpful. All right, so now when we clear the filter, all I want to do is bring that information over. So let's go ahead and see how we did that. The first is, if you'll take a look at when I typed in test, you'll see that the font automatically changed to black. Well, how did we do that? Well, let's take a look at something here. Each one of these, using conditional formatting, we can change it, but each one of these contain the word enter. So if that's the commonality, we can use conditional formatting to make this text italicized and gray only because they contain the word enter. Only because they contain the word enter. So let's go ahead and see how we did that. Under the home, let's go ahead and take a look into conditional formatting, and then we're going to manage the rules, and you'll see there's actually, it should be just one rule. Oh, we've got two different rules. Let's go ahead and delete that rule. We don't need that. Okay, so we see this cell value. If it contains the word enter, then I want to format it. And we can see that the font is italicized and the color is gray. And so that way, only those items that contain the word enter are colored, so that gray. This way, any type of regular type of text that you put in there is automatically going to turn to black. So that's how we get the word enter automatically, and that's really, really helpful. Now let's see how we did the filtering. For that, we can go into the VBA. All right, into the VBA, under the developers, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at first the on sheet, because we know we have something happening when we make changes on the sheet. So when we click events, so here we have run the table filter on change, but not when the text contains enter, right? If the word enter is, I don't want to run a filter, so we can run that. So we're going to say if there is a change, D26, E26, or G26. Those are the three cells where we have D26, E26, and G26. So if there's a change and the change does not contain the word enter, then run a filter. All right, so we can do that. So how do we test if the word is enter? We can use the word inString. inString is a great command. It's going to say if the current user change contains enter equals 0, that means it's not found, enter is not found, then run this events filter table. Then run this macro. Let's take a look at that macro. Click definition, we can find that macro right here under the events filter table here. And it's a very simple macro because we already have a macro called events refresh. So all we need to do is put in some advanced filter information into our events list. So basically what I want to do is this. Let's go ahead and take a look into our events list here. We have our events list and we have our advanced filter when we refresh it. And our advanced filter basically says test run on unique values all the way over here and pull it out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some filters here, here, under the event name or event type or employee, and I'm going to put them right here in the criteria and run our advanced filter based on this criteria. Right now we have no criteria, but if we were to run our advanced filter on our events, let's go ahead and put in a training so we can run only the training. Now when we look at our events list, we're going to see that we have training under the event type, and you'll notice the asterisk before and after, and that's just in case if there's any text before or after, it's also going to be. So now we've run our advanced filter using the event type training, and it only returns items with training, and this macro runs in the event refresh. So all we need to do really is put in an event name or event type, and let's say we wanted to drill down even further under, let's say, test event or something like that. We can drill down even further using multiple criteria. So let's say we wanted to add an additional criteria. Let's say chase, the word chase or CHA. Now we have two criteria, one with CH and one with training. So both of those now are going to be in our events list. So now we have CH and training. Now we can drill down even further and run our advanced filter, and returns just one item. Clearing the filter, what it's going to do is going to clear all this information out and then rerun our advanced. So we also have a clear filter, and that's going to do is clear out those criteria here. It's going to reset all the names into our fields, and then it's going to run the same macro, but this time no criteria. Events refresh, we went over that before. So that's how we clear the filter. So to run the filter, all we need to do is determine to make sure it doesn't include the word enter. Remember, if it's enter, we don't want to add it, right? So if it doesn't, as long as it doesn't have the word enter, then AD2 in this case, it would be for the event name equals the asterisk and whatever's in D26 and then the asterisk. This way we can search for any name, anything that's contained. It's a partial match, so that's going to be even more helpful to find what we want. And we're going to do the same exact thing for the event type and the same exact thing for employee name. All we're going to do is add these items into the criteria, and then we're going to run our events refresh. Now our events refresh is under here, events miscellaneous, and we can find that macro right here under events refresh, and all this is going to do is clear our existing list and run an advanced filter based on the criteria. Here's the criteria here. So that's the criteria that we just added. We went over advanced filter, so we're not going to go over it again, but it uses the criteria. If we've added information between AD1 and AQ2, it's going to include that criteria. Here it is, AD1 through AQ2. So it's going to encompass, if we have criteria, it's going to filter it based on those. But when we clear it, it's going to clear it. When we run that clear macro, so we go back into the events and we right click that, and we click assign macro, we're going to see that the events clear macro has been assigned to that. So when we clear that, all it's going to do is clear those rows of data and then run the advanced filter again. So what it's going to do, it's going to take this, it's going to clear all this out and run the advanced filter. And since there's no criteria, it's going to return all those items. So that is how we do it. That's how we get, I know it kind of went over fast, but we've got a lot to show you. So basically that's how we do it. And I want to be able to show you how we can quickly filter it out. So I'm glad I got to show that to you. Next up, we have an all-day event. Now this all-day event is only going to be for events basically that have a starting at and ending at. For example, training and leave have that, but a termination is a one-time event. So there's really no, starting at or one time is going to be just a one-time event. So something like a termination or something like a review would not have a starting and ending date. But training, would have a starting and ending date. Leave would have a termination. So for those two, we want the all day button to show up. And basically the idea of this all day button is when we click it, I wanted to take our company hours. If we look here in the company all the way in the admin here, where our company start time at 7 a.m. and our company end times at 6 a.m. We can adjust these as we want. But I want to take both these times and bring them over so that when all day it's automatically here at the starting at, and then of course here at the ending at. So that's what I want to do. So when we click all day, I want to bring those times 7 a.m. It makes for a very, very quick to do an all day. And of course, automatically those times are saved. So when we click update, you're going to see that those have automatically been saved. So that's really, really helpful. So it's a very simple macro. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. When we click assign macro, we're going to see a macro called event all day has been assigned. Let's take a look at that. Let's drill into that macro, into the VBA. We can do it in the events max. Also here in the events miscellaneous module, we can see events all day, the last one here. And all that we're going to do is we're going to just do two things. We're going to take L10 of the event sheet, and it's going to be equal sheet 4 J8, which is the start time. And the same thing, L11 is going to be J9. So all we're really doing is taking the information from 7 a.m. and we're pulling it from right here, from J8, from J9, and we're just pulling it right into the event. So that's a very, very simple macro, but it's very powerful. It's going to save us a lot of time. And then, of course, if we want to adjust the hours, we could just simply adjust them to 5 p.m. and click. And so that's really easy. Just to change the hours, we can change them once we have them. All right, so moving on, we've got that. We've got the all day. I've showed you the filtering. Let's go ahead and take a look at what else. We've added a lot of features here. Employee Manager events, we fixed automated tab. Oh, there were some automated tabs in the Employee Manager. Now they're all working pretty well. So now when we automatically add here, right? And even when we're in the table, it automatically goes tab. So that was good. And what we did, and the same thing for time clock history, we tab over here, and then when we're in the table, it automatically works. Before that wasn't working. And so what I did there is I'll show you into the automatic tab, under the developers tab. Let's go ahead and take a look at the tabs to see how we fixed that issue. Under the auto tabs macro, and basically what I want to do is I want to specify, for example, this sheet 1, if we're in sheet 1, I want to specify if we're above or below a specific row, then I want to specify a specific tab order, and I only want that to run. So that's what we're going to do. If the sheet 1, we're just specifying, for example, if the active cell row is greater than 85 and less than 89, then this is the tab order, and I only want to run that when we are. So we only want to run this on key when we're in there. So we can do that in the Employee Manager, all the way up here, Employee Manager. So to do that, let's take a look at the selection change here. So now what we're doing is we've set a specific range now. I've defined our specific range. For example, F6 to K16, that is the range. Then set it to true, otherwise false. Let's take a look at that in the Employee Manager. F6 to all the way to K16, that's going to turn it on. However, if user selects here anything below that, it's going to turn it off. So based on a specific range, only if the user selects within these ranges, these are all the auto tab ranges, it's going to turn on key true. Otherwise, it's going to set it to false. And when it's set to false, it returns back to the original tab functions of those keys. So that's how we did it. We also did that in the events too. When we click on the events, we're going to see the same thing right here. So we have the same thing here, E4 to N21, we've got that as well here, and then it's going to turn. So if we select anywhere between this range, it's going to turn it on, otherwise it's going to turn it off. So in the events, it's going to work well as well here, right here. So we can have that ability too. And then yet when we go into the individual table, it works just fine. All right, so we fixed that issue and we showed you how to do that. We've got the events filter. We've shown you how to do that. We've got the admin enable decimal. I want to show you this now. That's going to enable the decimal format. We've got the all day button and the report menu. So we're only left with the admin enable time decimal format. So let's go into that now. All right, and basically throughout the application, I want to give the user the ability to control what they're looking at. So that means when we click on the time clock history, we'll see that we have a total break in 1 hour, 8, and 1 hour. It's in the time format. However, when we go ahead into the admin and we change that to a decimal format, and then go ahead and refresh the employee, we'll see that that all changes to a decimal. And now you'll see the break is in 1 hour, 8, and decimal formats. So we can change that very easily, and there's a few ways we do that, and it's all based on the settings here. And in fact, this particular setting is also connected to another setting called time integer, and this time integer is either 1 or 24 depending upon the setting, and that's going to help us in our formula. So when we change this from decimal to time format, we have a named range in this cell. It's called time integer here. And that time integer is going to change to 24 when the format becomes a time format. That's going to help us in our formulas. So you'll see when it changes automatically and updates, and it's really all based on just a little bit of a formula when we use our time clock list. And of course, we also change the format. So not only do we change it, let's go ahead and update that. So not only do we change the value, but we change the format. And take a look at this cell value as a time format. But when we change that format into decimal, we also change the format of a cell. So back into the employee manager, refreshing the screen again, you're going to see that it is now, these cells are now a number format. So we go ahead and change the format as well, and we'll walk you through that on the code. And as well, the total regular hours and the total overtime hours are automatically totaled here. And you'll see we use that time integer here as well in the multiplication, because we need to know if it's a time format, this time integer is just going to be 1, where if it's a decimal format, it's going to be 24. And back into the admin screen, we'll see right now in the decimal format, it values 1 for the decimal 24. So we know that multiplier, because as you know, a day, one single day is 1 in Excel. So 1 hour is 1 divided by 24. And so we need to multiply that to get those decimals properly. So we use the time integer here so that we can multiply by either 1 or by either 24 to get the accurate amount. And we do that same thing in the formulas here. If we go ahead and look in the time clock list, and remember these formulas, these are the formulas that get copied down in order to determine our total break, regular hours, and overtime. And these formulas also contain this time integer so that we can determine the proper number based on what was chosen, based on the format in this time integer. So we're going to see they're going to be 1 divided by the time integer, either 24 or 1, divided by the max day hours. So we need to know that. And then either 1 divided by the time integer, which is going to be AC minus AB. This is the clock out time minus the clock in time, and then multiply that by 24. Always multiply that. It'll get us the whole numbers that we need, and of course minus the total break. That is going to get us our regular hours. Then of course overtime, if it's greater than our max day hours. This is set up max day hours here, and of course that's set up in our admin right here under overtime occurs. That named range is max day hours, so that helps us determine when it's overtime and when it's not. So we change those formats, and that's into the VBA, and let's go ahead and show that to you. So let's take a look at that into the developers under the Visual Basic. Now when we make that specific change, we're actually making changes to one specific cell, J12. So when we make a change to J12, I want those formats to change. So we start off on the sheet code. So we go into the admin here and we look for a change, right? We're making a specific change. On the change, if the global time for it, run the time format macro. On the changing J12, then run a specific macro. What macro is that? That's called the admin set total time format. That is a new macro that we've added, and that's located here in the admin. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through each, and I'm going to determine what the format is. Is it a time format or is it a decimal format? If the time format is decimal, then make changes to these. Sheet 1, which is of course our employee manager here, that sheet, I want from G28 to I44, I want that number format to be decimal. Of course, on sheet 16, the payroll, we need to make changes to totals there. We want to set those number formats to decimal as well. And of course, on the reports, which we just saw, we also want to make changes there. Else, let's put time format. If it's a time format, we're going to do just the opposite. Same cell, same range, except this time we're going to be adding this time. We're going to set the number format to hours, minutes. You can change these as you see wish. So that's going to change them. That changes our formats based on that macro. So it's a really, really great macro, and you can increase this or update it based on that. So it's going to change it throughout the application just with this one change of a cell. So it changes it throughout the entire. There may be more as we go. I may increase that if we find out certain areas where we want the format change, we can easily update that. But for now, I've just done it for the employee manager, the reports, and of course the payroll. So the payroll as well, it gets updated automatically. So here we see 8 hours in the decimal, but when we go ahead and change that to, well, let's go ahead and just update it. All we need to do is update it actually. And in the payroll here as well, we'll see 8 hours here in the format. Those are in time formats, but if we change that from a time format back into decimal format, and then we refresh the employee back into the payroll, we'll see also that now it's in decimal format. Now it is in decimal format, so even for the payroll. So it's a really, really powerful feature, because different people like to see sometimes in decimal formats and sometimes they like to see them in time format. So it's going to be really, really helpful. All right, that's awesome. I'm really glad I got to show that to you. We went through just about everything in this amazing training. So I'm super excited. We're going to get this finished up in just a few weeks. We're going to probably focus on sharing. That's going to be a really powerful training, so we know how to share this workbook throughout anybody in the world and have unlimited users. So I can't wait to show that training to you. So make sure you stay tuned in for next week. Also, if you have not, please check out the dashboard course, an amazing course. So I think you'll really love it. It's a 15-hour amazing course on features that you'll have never seen before. Let's go ahead and show you a quick, if you're still here with me. I'd love to show you this. This is a dashboard feature. It's a single-click dashboard, and it gives you the ability to have a single click just like I showed you, except in this particular dashboard we have a ton of features, including a single click generate report graphs and report. We have the ability to date range, so we can do custom date ranges, which is really powerful. And we have the amazing profit and loss, where we can drill down specific statements. We have the ability to show or display columns based on the toggle columns, which is a really great feature just by clicking on it. So I think you will really, really love this amazing course. I'm going to teach you every single feature in here, including the ability to save as Excel PDF file, of course, email as, of course, Excel, PDF, or picture as well. So there's a ton of features. Make sure you get that checked out. All right, thanks so much for joining me on this training. Please make sure you download your copy by the links below in the description. Of course, the dashboard course, you can check that out with the links in the description as well. Please make sure you share this, and I'd love to hear your comments. I'll respond to every one of them. Thanks so much for joining me this week. Have a great day.